Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Beatles Forever. Recently I did a video talking about the Beatles and their film, The Magical Mystery Tour. I thought, let's take a look at the film Help. Then that was the second movie by the Fab Four. In this movie, the Beatles are being pursued by foreign people who want a ring back that Ringo somehow possesses. And somehow, it originally was on this girl that was going to be sacrificed in order for this guy that's there to be a ruler. So the Beatles were jumping on the bandwagon that happened way back with Bill Haley in the Comets, Chubby Checker, Elvis Presley, and then those Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello films. It's a way to get the fan closer to the singers, enjoying seeing them in a new way, and not just on a stage singing. So where was the movie filmed? The Beatles sure got around in this film. The Beatles wanted to do this movie so they could go to exotic locations. So Help was shot in London and in Salisbury Plain, the Austrian Alps, New Providence Island, and Paradise Island in the Bahamas, and for tax reasons at Twickenham Film Studios. Okay, how the Beatles were inspired and how they inspired others. According to Den of the Geek, Help was inspired by the Marx Brothers and their movie Duck Soup. So the zaniness was a great tip of the hat to them, and Help in its way led to comedies like Airplane and the Monkees TV show. Inspiration's a great thing. The boys were having too much fun. Paul McCartney in the Beatles anthology stated that he didn't think any of them knew the script. They would learn it on the way to the set. But I was thinking, wow, that's brave of them to be going there not knowing any of the lines that they had. I couldn't stand that. I'd be so nervous. And John said none of the Beatles had as much fun doing the movie. He told Rolling Stone magazine that they felt like extras in their own film, and that was from an interview in 1970. The first movie they did, A Hard Day's Night, they gave a lot of input, and it was a more realistic movie. And Help was like the precursor to the Batman series with Adam West. The director really didn't explain to the Beatles because, well, the Beatles were feeling no pain. John told Rolling Stone magazine in 1980, but Lester, that was the director, never explained it to us, partly maybe because we hadn't spent a lot of time together between A Hard Day's Night and Help, and partly because we were smoking marijuana for breakfast during that period. Nobody could communicate with us. It was all glazed eyes and giggling all the time in our own world. It's like doing nothing most of the time, but still having to rise at 7 a.m., so we became bored. The movie starts out with the Beatles in their apartments. After the strange James Bond beginning with people in Egyptian or Middle Eastern clothing, they got upset at losing a lost ring. We find that the Beatles are going into their apartments through separate doors, but they're in the same room, which is funny. And then we get a glimpse at what makes each Beatle happy. George has a patch of grass by his bed in his own gardener, and John's running towards a bookshelf where he takes out his own book he has written and picks it out to read. Paul has an organ in his room playing it and reading comic books at the same time. That's Paul, the ultimate multitasker, it seems. And Ringo has his own vending machines with sandwiches in them. It is then that the weirdness begins, with Ringo being bitten by a woman who wants his ring. I love the 60s look at the apartment, very stylish. And let's make a list of the Beatles and who does the best acting job. Well, number one is Ringo. He keeps things natural and doesn't try to overact. Number two, John does a great deadpan at things going on around him, and he seems to be Ringo's buddy in this movie, and they spend a lot of time together. Three, George keeps things natural, and he doesn't seem to have as many lines as the others, but keeps engaged with them, and he also has some stuntman action scenes that are impressive. And then last on the list, sorry Paul, he tries a little too hard with his facial expressions. If he had chilled a little more, he probably could have done a little bit better, but by the end of the movie, I thought he was really doing a great job too. So they did good. Okay, next the boys are going to different locations to get the ring off Ringo to no avail. And it's neat that they take time to do music videos in this movie, and it certainly must have been a thrill to see the Beatles singing their songs from the Help album on the big screen, since a lot of fans probably couldn't make it to the concerts. In one scene, we have Paul shrinks. In the scene, the lady who had originally been trying to steal the ring off Ringo ends up being an ally. She's happy her sister is no longer going to be sacrificed because after a certain amount of time, she's free to go if she isn't wearing the dreaded ring. So poor Ringo doesn't want to end up dead, so he tries desperately any technique to get rid of that big red albatross on his finger. He's supposed to get a shot on this finger to shrink it enough to get the ring off. Unfortunately, the terrorists or kidnappers come crashing in, and the lady accidentally jabs Paul in the leg. So Paul ends up shrinking to the size of a gum wrapper, and John does a great job in this scene as he's worried about what happened to Paul, saying it was his best suit, because you see the suit sitting up but no Paul. Poor Paul is shrunk and he has no clothes on, so he finds a gum wrapper to wrap up in. The Beatles do a great job of fighting back their attackers. A funny scene is where John and George are fighting each other in the chaos. The scientists come in to get the ring, because at one point they had gone to these scientists to get the ring off, but they weren't able to help them. But then in the meantime, that one scientist thought he'd like to get the ring, so he was trying to grab it from him. John plays a tough guy in the scenes here, doing a great acting job, as well as Ringo, who acts desperate as anyone, knowing if he doesn't get the ring off, he's toast. Okay, now they got the music in the film. To break up the zany tale of the ring, we get to see the Beatles perform their songs from Help. The first song is Help, and it's the Beatles in their element. They're on stage performing and loving the song. Then we realize that they're on a screen and someone's throwing darts at them. It's a great way to start the film. Next up is You're Gonna Lose That Girl. The lads are in the studio and Ringo's smoking and playing the drums. George and Paul are sharing a microphone and harmonies, and John is singing the lead. I love that once again they're keeping things simple. It's like we get to be a fly on the wall and see them perform, so that's really neat. Next song up is You Gotta Hide Your Love Away. The Beatles are playing the song in their apartment. George is trying to cozy up to the lady kidnapper on the couch by giving her sly looks, and John is doing his Bob Dylan impression, singing the song. Paul, in the meantime, is giving the lady his flirtatious ways by giving her a wink, and then Ringo's on the mattress that's down on the ground, lower than the ground, playing the tambourine. So it's really a neat scene to watch. Next up is Ticket to Ride. This is where they go to the Swiss Alps, and we get to see the Beatles outside in the snow. George is coasting down the mountain without moving. He's just letting the skis do all the work, and it's pretty funny. And it's also interesting to see them on ski bikes. I don't know if they're called ski bikes, but they're like bikes with skis on the bottom part, like one ski. This really takes the film to the top. We get to see the boys out on the snow skiing, or trying to, and that's cool. And there's a piano on the mountain and lots of action. Next up we have I Need You, and this is a George song. And this song is shot in a field where military actions are being done. And you get to see Stonehenge from a distance, which is incredible. And it looks very cold out there, and George looks like he would like a thicker coat on. The Beatles seem to be in the middle of their maneuvers, the military maneuvers, and Ringo's smiling away, playing the drums. Next song, The Night Before. This too is out in the field, and it looks pretty cold out again. But the Beatles look like they're having fun. That is, until the army shows up and bombs from the terrorists go off. It's a free-for-all. And then John's almost run over by a tank, and he falls down, but Paul is in front of the tank trying bravely to stop it, while George and Ringo try to get John up. It's true friendship there. Next song is Another Girl. And that finds the Beatles in the Bahamas on the beach, and Paul is playing a girl like a bass. You just have to see it. And the others are in the scene doing various things while playing their instruments. The next song is the Help finale song, and this song shows all the zaniness of the film with chaos going on all around. You have to see it to get the idea. Everyone walks away at the end of the movie. Let's just say chaos is the operative word for the Help song at the end. Okay, Marx Brothers zaniness. There's a Marx Brother-like action in this movie. You have the boys together throughout the film and having them react to things going on around them with quips and action. The Beatles hang in there and make you smile and laugh with their facial expressions, as well as the way they deliver their lines. Then the Beatles end up in Scotland Yard trying to get help for Ringo, But the Beatles aren't impressed with the Scotland Yard guy. John snipes back when the inspector asks how long the group will last, and John asks about the great train robbery that was never solved. Don't get into John's case. Then they end up at Buckingham Palace. John and Paul want Ringo to cut his finger off, stating he'll be able to play the drums without it. Ringo states, "They expect me to cut my finger off." You can't blame Ringo for not wanting to agree. Poisonous gas comes through the hose in the room, but the Beatles place the hose out of the window, and the Buckingham guards all pass out that are marching down below. The Beatles state that it must be their tea break. So next we end up in a bar, and George has no money, looking in his wallet, or so he says, so Ringo pays. And it sounds like, according to the other Beatles, that this happens a lot. Ringo goes through the floor in a trap door, and the other Beatles escape by jumping out the window. I bet they had a blast being stuntmen in these shots. Okay, Ringo's in the basement with a Bengal tiger trying to jump out of trouble. Everyone starts singing Beethoven's Ninth to calm the tiger. The lady that's been assisting them says that he's been sung that at the zoo and it calms him. So it works. The tiger looks like he wants to go to sleep. So next the Beatles end up in the Bahamas, and the Beatles fly to a warm setting at their request. They start to run away, and then they show a scene of them swimming. Then they're on their bikes when John and Paul decide they're tired of running and want to face their attackers head on, so they turn around. Back they go. George and Ringo agree, so they're following too. And then they're being followed by Scotland Yard and the Bermuda police. The boys are looking for a temple, but what they find looks like a giant house or a warehouse that's been abandoned. And John, Paul, and Ringo end up inside, and then they end up in a cage with the terrorists putting the cage down. But George didn't have the cage on him, and he says, "I'm off." And John, I think, says, "Typical." And then we get to see George turn into an action hero fighting off the kidnappers, some of them anyway. Then poor Ringo falls through the trap door and is kidnapped by the scientists. George, not wanting anything to happen to his friend, leaps on the back of the car. And this is where, George is really active all throughout these scenes. The only thing I don't understand is when that George is taking the rear tire off when the car crashes. He could have grabbed Ringo and took off. Instead, he hops in the trunk with Ringo, and the tire flies off, and the car crashes into a tree. It's kind of wild. And then George and Ringo say goodbye. It's kind of crazy. Next, John plays decoy. He's dressed like Ringo, and he goes to the kidnappers, who are dressed like ball players, and they throw something at John that makes him pass out, and then they discover that it isn't Ringo when John's mask comes off, just like Mission Impossible. Next, the scientists get a hold of Ringo. The scientists really want the ring, and they're really willing to cut Ringo's finger for it. Luckily, the lady that was a kidnapper sides with the Beatles and saves him. Only trouble is, when they jump off the boat, Ringo says he can't swim, then they're caught by the kidnappers. Next, mayhem ensues with everyone fighting with each other, the army with the kidnappers against the Bermuda police. And Ringo's ring finally flies off and goes to new owners. No one really wants to be sacrificed. And the ring ends up on one of the kidnappers, and he's running away from him at the end of the movie, so hopefully he'll survive his sacrificial sacrifice. Help is a movie like the TV shows Get Smart, The Monkees, and movies like Airplane, and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Number one is the Marx Brothers with their wit and wild scenes of comedy in their movies. The Beatles may not have felt as connected as they did for their first movie, A Hard Day's Night, but it didn't show. They looked like they were having as much fun as they did then. We get to see the Beatles in color. We get to see them in the studio, in exotic locations, and being together, sharing laughs and good times together. Who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Well, thank you for watching, and I hope everyone's been having a good day. Tune in again soon for another episode of the Beatles Forever. Thank you. Bye.